if you could just like read that at the top of the show, and then I'll pull it off the screen.
Oh, at the top of the show.
Yeah, if you just want to start with just the highlighted part at the top of the show.
I got it.
Hey, what's happening? Brother, what's up? This is a groovy party, man. Yeah, brother, like it. Right on. Hey, what's your name?
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Calvin. How you doing? How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. A little rainy on Saturday, but we hung in there. How was yours?
Hey, man, it was, warm on yesterday. And, everything's all right with the world if in Milwaukee and in the state of Wisconsin, we're in the 70s, right?
Yeah, that is right. It was beautiful yesterday.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this. At 9 o'clock, we have our Scony Summer giveaway. So make sure you download the Civic Media app and get ready for a chance to win a Dale's Prize Pack, Brewer tickets, or a unique Wisconsin staycation. Yes, that's absolutely correct. Staycation. So anyway, it is Monday, and I am honored to have this new segment on the Earl Ingram Show. It is with the Patriotic Millionaires, and every other Monday we're going to be joined by Mr. Pierre Hollis or Pearl, and we'll be talking about the Patriotic Millionaires. They've written a book called Tax the Rich, and you really should get it and take some time to read it, because it does give you a perspective from people that we normally don't even get to hear about, who have your and my interests at heart. The average everyday Joe, the hardworking Americans who have made our nation what it is. And yet these are people who are blessed and fortunate and don't have to struggle every day to make sure that their bills are paid, but yet they are concerned about you and I. So I am beyond, excited to have Mr. Pierre Hollis of the Patriotic Millionaires on the line this morning. Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, Earl. Thanks for having us on the show.
I'm really excited about this new segment. I think we're going to learn an awful lot as we move forward with this. And we wanted to begin today's program. Everybody talks about we've got a great economy. The economy is doing great, man. I mean, Calvin, you've noticed how great the economy is doing, right?
Well, I hear the news about the stock market.
Well, that's, when we talk about how great the economy is, at the root of it is people talking about the stock market. Calvin, how many stocks do you have? Do you own?
I currently do not have any.
Okay. Well, you would be the rule and not the exception of the American people. And so it is, again, with great pleasure that I introduce Mr. Pierre Hollis. Good morning to you, sir. We're going to talk a little bit about the economy.
Great.
Let's talk about the economy from the perspective of, the Patriotic Millionaires.
Sure. Yeah. So, from the perspective that we often hear on the news, it's great, right? It's great. It's a great time to be rich. It's a great time to have a lot of money. It's a great time to have a lot of money in the stock market. I mean, what's not to love about that? I guess the only thing that's not to love about that is that it doesn't apply to most Americans, right? It just doesn't. So we can talk about how great it is to be wealthy, but honestly, it's always great to be wealthy. It's not so great right now to not be wealthy. And as a matter of fact, it hasn't been a great time to not be wealthy for a long time. So, it's hard to reconcile what you hear on the news with what most people are living every day, which is putting food on the table, putting gas in the vehicle, and trying to make a rent or mortgage payment. Not a great time for those folks.
I was looking at the definition of, Wikipedia's definition of what the economy is, and put it this way: an economic system is any of the ways in which humankind has arranged for its material provisioning. Now, that's
Hmm.
that's not the way we see the average person sees the economy. Can you explain that in English for us?
Yeah, I wish I could. I wish I could. It's odd that we have chosen to center our definition here in the United States on stock market performance. It's a really odd way of looking at things, and we've been doing this for quite a while. We talk about unemployment numbers, we talk about the stock market, we talk about a couple of other things, and most of those things kind of ring hollow to folks. If you already have a job, you're not terribly concerned with what the unemployment rate is, right? You already got a job, right? And so if you don't have a job, great. But a lot of people have two or three jobs. So telling them about low unemployment isn't helping them. It's just telling them that there's fewer jobs out there to maybe shift to. But yeah.
You and I were talking about this before we went on the air. And I said to you, I remember when George Bush Jr. was the president and the Dow Jones was at 6,800. And before President Barack Obama came into office, and there was lamenting about how bad things were
Mhm.
going in the economy. And now it's over 40,000. And the average American is saying, hey, inflation is killing me.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not able to move forward. So is it safe to say that we're better off with a Democrat in the office or a Republican in the office when it comes to the economy and the
Well,
benefit of the average citizen?
the truth of the matter is it almost doesn't matter who's in office. It almost doesn't matter who's in office because we've had great economies with Democratic presidents, great economies, and the same with Republicans. But the commonality amongst either party is the rich always do better, and things always get even better and better for the wealthy. And so it almost doesn't matter who's in charge because the root issues are just simply not being addressed. Right.
Well, so although the average citizen is the majority in this, how can we don't seem to have the ability to change the trajectory of the economy that we're living in?
Right. I think there's two problems, right? There's two kind of aspects of this. Number one, I think some people don't realize how unfair the system is, right? They know that they're suffering and they hear about other people who aren't suffering, but I don't think most people realize how inherently biased the system is towards rewarding the wealthy. If they knew the shenanigans that were going on, and we talk about some of this in our book, if they knew what was going on, they would be outraged. So that's thing number one. Most folks don't realize how rigged, I'll say rigged, the economy is against anyone who's not wealthy. That's thing number one. Thing number two is most people don't know how to do anything about it. They don't know how to make their voice heard. They feel powerless. Some people say they're not even going to vote because it doesn't matter. Hey, I just said it doesn't matter who's in power, right? Doesn't matter who's in power. So maybe they hear that and they stop listening and they figure, well, doesn't matter who's in power. I'm not going to vote. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you got to make your voice heard. And it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. You need to make your voice heard. You need to be educated on how the system is rigged, and you need to know how to make your voice heard. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Mr. Hollis, your and my generation has been pretty fortunate that, as I said to you before, the majority of the people from your and my generation were able to live the American dream,
Yeah.
to own a home, to send their kids to college, to go on a vacation. We're not talking about opulent things, but we were able to take advantage of a nation that was able to provide those things for the majority of its citizenry. But that is long since gone away.
Yeah.
And so the generations that have come after us, we've got to fight for them to have that opportunity. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And so love my generation, right? Who doesn't love their generation? But the truth is, we've been taking care of number one, which is ourselves, for a while, and we've
Right.
not been focused on the younger generation. We like to complain that they, this, that, and the other, and crazy kids, and they don't work hard. That's not true at all. They work very, very hard. And what we have left them with is a situation that is untenable, unsustainable, and the future for them is pretty bleak. And that's our fault. That is our fault.
Well, not to mention tremendous debt.
Yes.
So if nothing else, what we should do is make sure that's wiped away.
Yeah.
To give them a firm playing field to address the other issues. But with that tremendous debt that they're facing and faced with, it's almost impossible, for them to even be able to turn these other things around because of the heavy debt.
Yeah, we talked about how things were different back when you and I were growing up in our formative years. When you look at most metrics, right, productivity, worker productivity has been going up, constantly going up. Corporate profits going up. CEO pay going up. Right, those are good things. Maybe not the CEO pay. What hasn't been going up? Minimum wage hasn't been going up. What else has been going up? Tuition's been going up. Interest rates have been going up. Mortgages have been going up. All those bad things have also been going up. But the one good thing that could have been going up, minimum wage, those types of things, those are not going up. Those are flat. And so you get this gap between how things were and how things are. And the gap just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
This is just great stuff. And I could talk to you for the entire 2 hours of the show and still be longing for more information from you. But we'll have to put those things together in an extrapolated period of time over the months. But I will say, Red, Whiteville, and Blue Democracy is up next with Pierre Hollis of the Patriotic Millionaires on a Monday edition of a Motown Monday edition of the Earl Ingram Show. 844-967-2789 is the number. You're tuned into 540 AM WAUK. All right, welcome back to a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. And I am really thrilled to have on the line Mr. Pierre Hollis. He is with the Patriotic Millionaires this morning. Every other Monday, we're going to have the pleasure of having the Patriotic Millionaires on the Earl Ingram Show. So make sure you write it down on your calendars and put a note on your refrigerator that the Patriotic Millionaires are going to be appearing on the show. Let's talk about this catchy phrase, Mr. Hollis, red, whiteville, and blue democracy. What are you referring to, sir?
Yeah, so we have this program that we started about, I guess, 2 years ago now. It's called the Great Economy Project, where we go into communities and we educate folks. We provide training and education on the economy and how people can advocate for themselves. And so the pilot program, if you will, took place in a place called Whiteville, North Carolina. And so we've been working with the folks there in Whiteville for about 2 years, and we were documenting the process. We didn't know how it was going to turn out, but we had a crew there, a film crew, and they were just conducting interviews, recording hours and hours of video, and in the end, they put together a documentary, and the documentary is called Red, Whiteville, and Blue, and it just talks about the work that we were trying to do down in Whiteville, but more importantly, it talks about the members of that community that came together and decided that things needed to change, and they were going to be the instrument of that change. And that's what the movie's about.
There seems to be in this country a divide between urban and rural America, and I never can understand why, because they both suffer from the exact same torment,
Right.
and yet where we should be mobilizing and coming together to fight the same instances that cause us the pain, where somebody's working to divide us. Your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is an age-old strategy. It's called divide and conquer. Everybody's heard of it, right? And that's what we see a lot of in politics today. We see a lot of these folks that want to divide people and get them to argue amongst each other as a distraction, really. So they not concentrated on the things that really matter. So we see the urban rural divide. We see the Democrats versus Republican divide. We see all sorts of what I would think artificial divides as a distraction. It's about money. It's about power. That's what it's all about, and everything else is a distraction. And we said earlier, I said earlier that it doesn't matter who's in power because they all work towards the same thing, which is keeping themselves in power and getting more money. And if people would stop falling into this artificial construct of left versus right, rural versus urban, and just realize that everybody's getting cheated. Like everybody's getting cheated out of the benefits of this economy. And as soon as folks realize that, and folks in Whiteville know that, they know that. And so we've got Democrats, we've got Republicans, we've got independents all working together to fix the economy, because in our belief, once the economy is fixed, everything else is going to get fixed.
Mr. Hollis, if people would think that people who are wealthy should not even think outside, and this is what we've been led to believe and what we've seen, is people who are so wealthy, not all, but far too many, don't even recognize the other citizens of the nation. And they fail to understand that, they don't live on an island by themselves. You can't totally ignore humanity,
right,
and live in your glass house and tower and say, well, we don't care much about those people. But yet we are in a harrowing place right now. Is it safe to say that? How do we get out of that?
Yeah, well, I understand what the situation is, and find a way to deal with it, and find a way to find your voice, band together with people who maybe don't look like you. There's racial divides, all kinds of divides, right? But understand what the problem is, and the situation we're in right now is unsustainable. It is unsustainable when we continue to allow wealth and money and power be concentrated in the hands of very, very few people. That is just bad for the nation. It's bad for everyone. So yeah, we need to get out of our bubbles. We need to see what's really going on. We need to understand that wealthy people are are rigging the economy every day, and they're not going to stop on their own, right? There's a couple people, a couple of wealthy folks that realize the problem and are trying to fix it, but a good number of wealthy folks are just happy with the way it is, not recognizing, they're running off a cliff themselves.
So money in politics, it's always been difficult to even get around the wealth that has been accumulated in this nation. And a lot of that wealth has really been accumulated over the last 30 years,
Yep.
right? I mean, there were wealthy people before. Now we're talking about ungodly wealthy people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've got more billionaires than we've ever had, and we're about to have a trillionaire probably in the next 10, 20 years. It's unbelievable.
And you hear people say, well, um, Elon Musk is going to be a trillionaire, and they get all excited. And I say, my God, one man should not have $1 trillion when so many people go to bed hungry and homeless. What is wrong with us as humanity? What is wrong with that?
It's amazing because this nation was founded because people were tired of a monarchy, right? They were tired
Right.
of a monarchy. They didn't want a king, a wealthy king, making all the rules. So we came to the United States. We formed the United States. We made a democracy, and now we're turning it into the same thing we left. Instead of kings, now we have oligarchs. We have wealthy people who are just going to run the show, just like kings. That's what we tried to get away from.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Hollis, I wish I had more time with you. And we will as time goes on, because there's so many different things to talk about. It's great to know that there's a group like you guys, and hopefully you can encourage others like yourselves to come on board. Are you having any success in that?
A little bit, a little, a little bit. But I got to tell you, a lot of wealthy people think we're crazy. Yeah, they
I'm
think we're
sure
crazy.
they do.
Maybe
Well,
we are.
well, well, we are thankful to have you guys around. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you.
This is a beginning, not an end. And we're excited to have you guys, the Patriotic Millionaires, every other Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. That's Mr. Pierre Hollis. Tell all the other guys we said hello, and thank you for fighting for us.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Up next on Motown Monday, Sandy Williams is going to be joining us. 844-967-2789. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
remember my first love affair. Somehow or another, the whole darn thing went wrong. But my mama had some great advice, so I thought I'd put it in the words of this song. I can still hear her saying, boy, oh, I see you sitting out there all alone, crying your eyes out, 'cause the woman that you love is gone. Oh, there's gonna be a whole lot of trouble in your life. Oh, so listen to me, get up off your knees, 'cause only the strong survive. That's what she said, only the strong survive.
All right, welcome back to a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. And if you're wondering why Sandy Williams is joining me this morning, it's because Sandy has some plans for Tuesday. So we got him in today. We're glad to have him. How you doing, Sandy?
I'm doing all right. I mean, I'm heading to steamy hot Sarasota.
Oh,
The boys
man.
I coach in rowing have made it to the national competition, and they hold the national competition in Sarasota, which sounds like it might be pleasant, but I've been there like 4 years running, and it's walk slow hot.
So congratulations. I know the commitment you have made over an extended period of time to rowing and young people. And, it's something about, seeing the fruits of your labor, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like all sports, it takes dedication on the part of the kids. Rowing is particularly strenuous and difficult. So, yeah, it's exciting. I did it as a youth, so it's kind of a nostalgia too.
So Sandy, Rupert Murdoch got married for the 5th time.
Yeah, I saw a picture.
93 years young, spry, I guess they would say.
Yeah, and I don't know how old his wife was.
67.
Yeah, and which is relatively old, but a lot younger than he is.
Yeah, and his 5th marriage.
Yeah.
The guy clearly doesn't like being alone.
Well, no, he apparently some people learn, some people don't from their prior mistakes.
Well, the guy's been married 5 times.
Well, I suspect it's relatively easy for him to find someone who wants to say yes.
No kidding.
Regardless of I don't know the man. I just know about him. But yeah.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Elizabeth Taylor, who was married probably 5 or 6
No,
times.
I think she was married 7, but two of them were to the
same guy.
Richard Burton.
Yeah, right, Richard Burton. You and I we're still on our first wives. What are we missing out? Oh, well, I shouldn't say that. My wife is listening.
Yeah, I think just let's jump to another subject.
Right. Well, I got some other subjects to jump to. I don't know if you heard any of my conversation with Pierre Hollis, a patriotic millionaire.
I did. I was listening as I drove out here.
What do you think of? He was talking about what the economy really is.
Well, I mean, it's what I've been talking about, which is what I call the architecture of the economy. So, we still have a middle class, but the middle class looks and feels different than it used to. It used to be one breadwinner, now it's 2.
Well, it's smaller,
and it's declined in number. The number of families in the middle class has gone down, but the nature of the middle class family has also changed. 2 breadwinners instead of 1. They face now child daycare costs. They didn't used to face those because one of the breadwinners stayed home. One of the now breadwinners would have stayed home in the past. They face healthcare costs they didn't face in the past because that all came as part of their employment arrangement. And they face worries about retirement and pensions, which also was more or less, if you were a middle class family, then you were in a position of employment with your one job where all of those things came with the deal. Well, they don't come with the deal anymore. And I think we failed to reconcile with that.
He talked about the stock market, and to hear that the stock market is over 40,000 and you hear people celebrating that, it doesn't have any bearing whatsoever on the majority of the American people.
Yeah, I mean, the Wall Street Journal mentioned that about 50% of Americans participate, but most of them don't even know they're participating. Most of them,
Their
well,
pensions.
they have a small pension fund that they've set up themselves that might be participating, or they have a pension fund that's provided to them that is participating, so they have an indirect participation in it. But wealth accumulation is now occurring in a relatively rare atmosphere of the top 5 or 10% of Americans. It used to be that you could maybe get intergenerational wealth in the form of a home that you owned, that by the time you died, you owned it free and clear, and you passed on to your child the value of that real estate. It's getting harder and harder to accumulate real estate, to have your own home in this new
Right.
American dream, where the new middle class family. Typically, many of them have uh, debt from college that we didn't face in the past. So there's just a change in the complexion of the middle class family, making it harder for them to achieve the American dream and to accumulate intergenerational wealth. But if you own stock, you can get wealth that grows when you don't sweat. When you're sleeping, it can happen. But it's very hard for most people to even think about accumulating the money, to set aside enough money to actually participate in the stock market.
So, Sandy, as I was preparing for the show this morning, and I was on Newsweek, and it talked about this, and I was interested in your response to this question. The death of Western values. The death of Western values. And so you could ask the question, what are the Western values that people are lamenting the death of? And so, what were the Western values, and what happened to them? And so I was looking at what they looked at and talked about, um, included the Western values. The West once prided itself on being the bastion of freedom, a place where the individual's rights and liberties were sacrosanct, where various viewpoints weren't just tolerated but encouraged. The events of September 11th, however, ushered in an era of unprecedented state surveillance, governmental overreach, and a pervasive culture of ideological conformity that would have appalled the very architects of Western democracy. Sandy, Western democracy as we knew it, that America valued, that America touted all over the world, and that people in this country, no matter where they were touted. What happened?
Well, I think it's happening, and it's happening around the world in many cases. I think, however, we can go to some foreign countries and see a democracy that's operating quite successfully, and is accomplishing its evolution peacefully and wisely. We aren't having as much luck with that. Okay, our democracy is challenged, and is our two-party system seems to be having a lot of difficulty coming to grips with the things that are required in the 21st century. And I guess we could look to 9/11 as being part of it, but I think a lot of it has to do with acrimony within our politics that probably started. Karl Rove, I think, was an early architect of the process of paralysis. And that process, coupled with the frustration of this evolving family, middle class family, with all the problems they face, makes them very restless, makes them upset and angry without exactly understanding why things are different today than they were in 1970, not knowing what to do. And and then we have a great deal of social change in the country. We have a change in our demographics that's ongoing
Inevitable.
and very scale and occurring at a relatively large scale. I think it's inevitable. But so we have all these things happening at once. I think many countries around the world are having trouble with the demographic changes they're experiencing. I just think that a lot of countries are doing a better job with their democracy and not putting their democracy at risk in the context of dealing with these changes. We seem to be more at risk.
Well, so do you think we're more at risk because of what we were able to accomplish with our value system early on in our development, more so than other nations? I mean, we had all these different things going for us, and now a lot of those things have dissipated.
Well, our democracy started, 300 years ago, and almost 300 years ago, and so we end up with a much older model. Most of the democracies in the world actually are much younger. Most of them had us to look at and to consider when they were shaping their own. Many of the democracies in Europe are actually post World War One, so they're really quite young, and they had the wisdom of many ages to look at when they set themselves up. Most of them are highly committed to it because of the youth and how important it was to them to have it established. Maybe they have the same enthusiasm we did in 1840, because that's about the age of their democracy compared to when ours was the same age. Um, was it our value system? Could have been. It probably was. I think we were a country that did embrace dialogue and embrace debate, and did not necessarily villainize the opposition. The here in Wisconsin, if it was a model, in 1960 and 1970, the Democrats and the Republicans got along remarkably well. Uh, Not only superficially, but actually in the legislature and around the state.
Sandy, you're using the term "were," and I couldn't help but you know pause, past tense, "were," um, and you're right about that. Were. How is it possible to get back there?
Well, actually, I think we will get back there. I think a pendulum swing, and I think I'm hoping that we're out at the extreme edge of the pendulum swing, and we're going to moving back to the center. But it's not clear. We might still have more swing to swing. Um, but I think society is feeling a lot of distaste for what it's currently experiencing. And my hope is that it doesn't decide to cure itself by jumping to something else, okay, by rejecting the notion of the democracy as we knew it, and deciding to jettison that for following a promise made by somebody rather than the promise of the system.
Sandy, it's frustrating to say the least when people feel like there is no hope, and far too many, far too many Americans are feeling hopeless now, and so that can't be especially younger Americans.
Well, that's what I attribute to this change in the architecture of the economy, and the change in what the status of the middle class and the profile of the middle class, and what it takes to be in the middle class, and what being in the middle class provides to you. It ends up being a quest for a reward that doesn't taste very good, maybe when you get the reward. So I think there's that frustration needs to get solved, or we will have the kind of unrest that we have.
Guys, hang on. 844-967-2789. It's Sandy Williams on Monday, on a Motown Monday with the Earl Ingram
I'm
Show.
disoriented.
Yeah. All right.
Only the strong survive. Hey, you gotta be strong. You better hold on. Don't worry about it. Don't you know that things are gonna change? Oh, but you gotta be a man. You gotta take a stand. And don't ever
So, Earl, is the cool jerk a dance?
Yes.
Can you do it?
I used to be able to do the cool jerk. This was in about 1966 or 67. Welcome back to a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. Sandy Williams is on board. And before we go to the phone lines, this is from Brendan. There are many of us who are willing to fight for our liberties and freedom. And I don't mean in the physical sense. I would think that Brendan's a younger person. Let's go to Mike from Kenosha. Hey, good morning to you, Mike. How you doing? Thank you for the call.
Good morning. Happy Motown Monday to you and yours.
Yes,
what
sir.
A great day way to start a good week here. So, hey, a quick question, and then a couple comments.
Yes, sir.
Quick. What do you think the reaction would be of our founding fathers if they were somehow transposed from back in the day to today, and they hear that our electioneering, if you will, is by and large controlled by a donor network? The existence of a donor network in of itself, what do you think our founding fathers would think about that?
Well, I think they'd have an argument about it because, the founding fathers were divided about the question of landholding and the extent to which wealth was a predeterminant to status in the economy and in the society. But I'm confident that they would. What they wouldn't like is somebody else's wealth affecting. Their expectation was that landholders were important and that landholders would be representing their own individual interest. The problem we've got is that the people in Congress are representing somebody else's interests, and we don't know who those guys are, and they don't represent the interests of individuals. Most of them represent the interests of corporate interests.
Well, see, and that's the issue. We don't know who they represent. That's the issue. We should know who they represent. We, the people who put them in office. There shouldn't even be a question about that.
I think that's what the founders would have the problem with.
Right. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Well, and to me, then you just would have to. We know who the people are. We know who the donors are. We hear about them all the time. But when it's ultimately trickle-down economics that is at the very root of this inequity that we have found ourselves in over the last 40 years, that's the boogeyman, if you ask me. Trickle-down economy has left behind the vast majority of America all across the nation. And it's by design. I mean, by definition, trickle down. So, I think what I'd like to see is us calling a duck, calling trickle down economics really something that, it's not compatible with a republic. We have to get into the flawed Supreme Court decisions that made corporations, people, and money speech. No, that's wrong. And from there, that single Supreme Court decision, our whole system has been tilted on its side.
Well,
and go ahead.
Well, I think that money has become such a predominant influence and has for such a long time in Washington. It's been a long time that a congressman will tell you that when they get elected, they didn't realize that they were getting elected to dial for dollars, and that all they do once they get elected is raise money and make phone calls intended to accomplish that. But I think that founding fathers would really roll over in their grave about that meeting that was reported a couple of weeks ago between Trump and the leaders of the petroleum industry, in which he said, look, you guys give me $1 billion because I'll give you everything you can dream of in the way of public policy. And that did, the fact that that could be said and done, and that we don't have a huge hue and cry about it in Congress, in the news media, it was a one-day news item instead of being a big specter that became a big issue. And to me, that should be one of the biggest issues.
Well, we've also seen the Supreme Court do all kinds of crazy things that are absolutely screaming out for the American people to rectify. We are the only ones that can cleanse this. We're the only ones that can make this right again. Be the people.
Well, we
should be coming hard on the Supreme Court right now.
But Mike, the people trust the government. They believe in it far too many. And as you know, the conversation we were having earlier with one of the patriotic millionaires, is a lot of these things are baked into the political system now. And so people don't know how. I mean, where do they begin to fight? They vote, but voting can't change the trajectory of where things are now. We don't have the power as people to change this trickle down economics that Ronald Reagan ushered in because of the damage that it has done, in my opinion. Sandy?
Well, I think we lost our idealism quite a long time ago, and decided that cynically that politicians are all do it, so that when something like Trump's messaging to the petroleum industry at a private meeting occurs, many of the listeners are willing to dismiss it as, oh, well, this is something everyone does in Washington. They all do it. Okay. Well, they all do it doesn't sanctify it. And what we need to do is retrieve our idealism. But, I think that the American public, and probably rightfully so, has become very cynical about politics and how it works. And somehow we need leadership to bring us back to the idealistic look at it.
All right. Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show with Sandy Williams, and you hang on the line, 844-967-2789. And can you do the cool jerk?
When they see me walking down the street, they think twice and then they speak. On their faces they don't wear that smirk, 'cause they know I'm a king of the cool jerk. Come on, people. Can you do it now? Very superstitious.
All right, and welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show, a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. It's 844-967-2789. This hour is our statewide Scone Summer giveaway. You have the chance to win some great prizes, a Wisconsin Dale's prize pack, Milwaukee Brewer tickets, or one-of-a-kind staycation. Open the Civic Media app and text the word Civic to the station you're listening to. Text the word the Civic using the Civic Media app for your chance to win. All right. The last hour, we were talking about a couple things, and we've got some holdovers from that conversation. We'll go right to them. Oh, and by the way, Sandy Williams is joining me today. He won't be able to make it on Tuesday, but he's here today. So let's go to Joe from Madison. Good morning to you, Joe. You say what?
Hey, you guys, I'm sorry if I'm taking you away, but maybe not so far. Sandy, you said you were going to be heading off to doing some coaching activities. And I just wanted to take a break from your talk here, Earl, to comment on the fact that 2 years ago, I remember calling your show about Simone Biles. And at that time, Miss Biles had made the decision to step away from competing because she was in the throes of what the gymnasts call the twisties, where you get in the air and you cannot remember where your body is in space. And it's extremely dangerous. You can fall, and people have been left paralyzed from this situation. So she made this decision for her health and also for the health of the team, in terms of if she can't compete properly, she'd be bringing down the scores for the whole team, to step away from the sport. And at the time, she got, I remember you did this show where she just got an incredible amount of bad will. People described her as saying there's nothing heroic about quitting. The right-wing mouthpiece, Charlie Kirk, said about her that she's a selfish sociopath and she's a shame to this country, and we are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles. Well, last weekend, you can see the incredible videotape. She's back and kicking it out of the ballpark. Record 9th all-around title. First person to ever get this. First person. She's got a gold medal. She's gearing up for the Paris Olympics and looking very, very good. And at the time, I remember talking to you about this, Earl, and we were talking about the fact of, is part of the reason why she is getting all this grief that she's an African-American woman who's stepping away. And I said, it's not only that she's an African-American woman, but she's small in stature, and the fact that she's a woman, emotional, can't handle it. She can't handle it. Well, she can handle it just fine, obviously. And the fact that she's, as I said, kicking it out of the ballpark, to mix a metaphor there, it's just wonderful to see. And I can't thank you for 2 years ago when you went out and you championed her at that particularly harsh time. And I was so appreciative of what you had done in extolling this woman and letting her have that break and coming back, and she's just doing great, absolutely great. So I'd be interested in your reaction, both of you, particularly you, Sandy, as a coach, about this situation. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Hey, thank you very much for the call.
Well, coaches today have to go through a program called Safe Sport, where they learn how to make sure that they're dealing with young people and athletes correctly. They aren't, including harassment. I mean, there's obviously been a lot of problems around the country in terms of sexual harassment, but also other kinds of coercive kinds of coaching behavior, and obviously having a disability, or running into a problem like Simone did, having the twisties, which incidentally I think I might have some mornings. But anyway, getting I don't think people who are watching athletics understand what athletes go through in order to perform, and for the public to create an expectation that someone needs to put themselves through what they put themselves through. Gymnasts go through a great deal of dietary issues. Many of them develop food problems with food because of the attention they have to pay to it. and the danger of the sport that they do. I mean, I just think that it's the same as people who walk away from football. And NFL players who probably wisely make a decision that they're going to spare themselves the risks associated with being a gladiator for so many years, and then get critiqued for it as if they needed to do it or are required to do it because the public wants it.
And I too, as well, am a lifelong coach, and so thank you, Joe. I do remember the conversation. I had completely forgotten about it, but it is good to see that a woman like Simone Biles, who's gone through a lot of hardships in her life as a young lady who didn't have stability, her you know birth family. Uh, she did not grow up with her birth family, and so she went through a lot of harsh trials. It's great to see her, and people. It's easy for people to kind of point the finger. Athletes, it's not an easy reality in our country because athletes are expected to be superhuman, and many of them fail in that. And when they fail, we jump all over them. It's not easy, Sandy, to put your whole life before the world.
Well, I think, a couple of weeks ago, the PGA had an experience with the suicide of a golfer. And I think that brought home the extent to which athletics is a high pressure thing to be doing. And yes, we love watching it, but we have no right to demand that athletes continue to put themselves through what they put themselves through to compete.
All right, let's go back to Tom from LA. Hey, Tom, your thoughts. Thanks for hanging on, man.
Yeah, good morning. First, I also agree with the fact of especially the high-end athletics as myself as being a coach, at a more local level, but even the pressures are there for those young kids now that wasn't there before. So I just want to echo what Joe, I think it was Joe that just said what she said. As far as the other topic goes, I do want to push back on the patriotic millionaire in terms of the differences between who it is that's in office. Because if you really look at it, we can go from, and it's a question I would have for Sandy, is that when Hoover was president, it seems to parody what is happening now before FDR came in and had the New Deal and Eleanor Roosevelt and Francis Perkins pushing him to do the right thing in terms of going from the bottom up and the middle class being the most important thing. And I think Joe Biden has actually exceeded what I ever thought he would do in that vein, and I hope he continues to do so in his next 4 years. The other thing is people keep talking about how people are hopeless. The media keeps talking about how people are hopeless. I believe that they are, but I think that also everywhere on social media, the grifters that are the gaslighters on Twitter and all these different places that say that, remember, perception becomes reality. And we need to start talking a little bit more positive about the fact that we are very, very hopeful for the future because we have a president that is worried about climate change and different things like that, and putting a billionaire tax. It's not an easy thing to do. If he was a dictator, he could do it in a heartbeat. He's not a dictator. It's a democracy. We need to have full control of the Senate in the Democrats' hand, full support of the House in the Democratic hand, and we need to have the president in the full Democratic hand. And if then they are still kowtowing to their billionaire donors and all that stuff, throw all of the bums out of office. But I think we need to give the Democrats a chance because there really is a difference between the two parties. And I think that the goal of the Republicans since FDR has been to get rid of the New Deal and take everything from a public sector into a private sector. And I just wanted to know Sandy's thoughts on that.
Well, Tom, let me say this to you, and thank you for the call. I think that what Mr. Hollis was saying is, you hear that the stock market is doing great, and it is. And you hear that from Democrats. You hear that from President Biden. The stock market is doing great. And yes, the stock market is doing great, but it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. The stock market and where it is and what's happening with the stock market is going to continue down the path that is going, whether there's Democrats or Republicans in office. My opinion, Sandy.
Well, there's a guy on social media named Colin Coward who's a commentator just about sports. He basically concentrates on the NFL and NBA.
Right.
Well, he lately has been posting things saying, look, there's all this talk about how the U.S. economy is in a state of free fall. He said, I don't see it. All the things that are measured about the economy are doing well. And he said, our stadiums are full. The country is showing a great deal of prosperity, and all of that is true. And I think what the problem is that Trump in particular and the Republicans are running and trying to persuade the American public that somehow these last 4 years or the last 3.5 years with Biden have put the economy into a free fall. Okay, when all the things that we measure and all the things that Trump wanted to measure about the economy during his 4 years have been vibrant, are very powerfully strong. What's wrong in our economy is this architecture of the middle class. And the perpetrators of the problems associated with the middle class have actually been conservative policies. As one of the callers talked about, trickle-down economics. Trickle-down economics was really, maybe some people, Milton Friedman, maybe thought it was going to work, but it never has worked. What it has done is made the rich richer without having that wealth trickle down in any material way to the middle class. And the policies of the country that have been established through mainly corporate policies and then government policies, like the removal of full coverage for health care from the place of employment, the reduction in pension coverage in the place of employment, and replacement with self-funding through 401 plans.
Profit sharing.
All of this has really been what has backed the middle class into the situation. So are we in a free fall because of something that's happened in the last 4 years? No. Are we in a free fall? No. Do we have some things in the economy that need fixing? Yes. Which political group would you look to fix the things that we have the problem with? And that's where I think maybe the commentator earlier, maybe he just didn't talk about that, but I think that's what we need to focus on.
I think that's very well said. 844-967-2789. That's Sandy Williams on a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. 844-967-2789.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again, y'all.
All right. Welcome back to a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. Sandy Williams is on board today. He's got an engagement for tomorrow, so we have him in today. Sandy, foreign physicians can help solve America's doctor shortage. Iowa and Virginia joined the list of states eliminating needless extra training as a licensing requirement. We are struggling in this country to produce our own doctors, Sandy. There was a time in this country where we produced more doctors than almost any other nation. That has long since passed. And so if you go to any hospital and you'll find that an awful lot of doctors, from different countries. We don't have a monopoly on producing doctors anymore as we had in the past. And so what is happening is there are people who are asking the question, America's physician shortage is nothing to sneeze at. For primary care alone, the country will be short more than 40,000 doctors by 2030. American Medical Association President Jess Ernfield calls it an urgent crisis as nearly 1 in 4 American doctors will hit retirement age by the end of the decade. The crisis will worsen as the population grows and ages. There is a solution. States are starting to see the value of letting internationally licensed physicians help fill their doctor shortages. I don't understand why, Sandy, we are so hard on and making things so difficult to allow doctors from different nations to come in and fill voids that are wide open. You know, I don't think, Sandy, the requirement to become a doctor in Spain is much different than to become a doctor in America. The profession is the profession. Is it safe to say that?
Well, I mean, they would still have to pass the board exams
Right.
that would be required to demonstrate their competence. What used to happen is that they weren't allowed to even take the board exams. They had to go to some school here locally to prove that they had attended a medical college, I guess, of merit, a medical school of merit, that would then allow them to take the competence exams. So, I think first of all, lots of times professional organizations set up restrictions on entry into the profession because, well, it's good for the profession, right? It's called fence them out. It makes it harder to have a lot of competition. I think some of that was going on when the rules were initially in place. Also, I think we had an arrogance about our medical system, and we had a belief that in order to get competent medical training, it had to be done in the United States. I think we found out that many other countries have medical training that is very good. Maybe not some of it's superior to what is occurring here in the United States. So, you and I both know, based on our doctor,
You're right.
I see a number of different specialists. When you get older, unfortunately, you make good friends with different doctors, and all of mine are foreign.
I've got one American doctor, and I will tell
Well,
you.
all of mine are American.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got one
Yeah, that was
born
yeah,
American
yeah,
doctor.
yeah.
And when you see, as this article says, 1 in 4 are retiring and then not being replaced quickly enough, Sandy, by, uh, you know, um, Americans born in this country. The cost, I think, Sandy, of a medical education is prohibitive for students to go into medicine because of now just the sheer debt that is incurred.
Well, I think two things are at play here. One, the retirement rate for doctors has accelerated. There's been a substantial amount of burnout. The COVID pandemic contributed to it, but also I think the nature of the practice for doctors has changed materially. They're getting much less validation in terms of feedback because of the way they're required to practice under the new
Assembly line.
Well, yeah, they're
Yeah.
basically now most of them employees of hospitals. Hospitals are intent on making sure they make enough net profit to continue to operate and revenue. And so there's a great deal of pressure on doctors to see lots of patients, to spend very little time with patients, to highly specialize so that they are actually just get what the part of the patient they get to know might be the pancreas.
Right.
They don't get to know the patient. And so I think that's contributed as well to one, retirement, and two, the desirability of becoming a doctor. Okay, so that the much like we talked about the American dream fading, I think the dream existence of a doctor, the one that people used to perceive as what they would be chasing when they put themselves through medical school, no longer seems to be what it was for many people. And of course, medical school has become very expensive.
Well, that Marcus Welby doctor that we all used to
Yeah.
come to know, I never will forget as a young man, I had access to doctors who I got to know and who knew me. And so I could call my doctor up and say, hey, doctor, I need to, they're in their own practices, Sandy. And I could call my doctor up and say, hey, doctor so-and-so, I need to come in. I've got, my eyelashes hurting. And the doctor would say, okay, Earl, come on in. Right.
Right. Well, or when I was a kid, the pediatrician came in a car and came to your house,
Yeah.
and knew the family and had taken care of everyone in the family, and the meeting with the doctor involved refreshing the doctor on all kinds of family information and personal information. So yeah, like many jobs today, the level of interaction with this patient has changed so much that what it is to be a doctor is no longer what it used to be.
Well, and I can tell you that I haven't had the same doctor over for in the last 10 years. I haven't had the same doctor, my number one doctor, because every year or two, that doctor is changing. So he doesn't know me, and I don't know him. And so you don't get a chance to know them. So yes, the shortage is real. And we've got to do whatever is necessary, Sandy, to make those changes and allow others to come in because things are only getting worse. And there are talented doctors, Sandy, all over the world.
Absolutely, and so this is what's happening in America, though. I mean, experienced and specialized, talented people are in short supply in America in almost every field.
All right, 844-967-2789. It's Monday. That's a Motown Monday. Only today, I'm joined by Sandy Williams. 844-967-2789 is the number.
Listen to me. Whoa, it ain't nothing but a heartbreaker. Whoa, friend only to the Undertaker. Woo! He's loving and understanding. Tell me, he's got no place for him today. They say we must fight to keep our freedom, but Lord knows there's got to be a better way. Oh, whoa! sense of pride. But if I have to cry to keep you, I don't mind weeping if it'll keep you by my side. Can't you cry your pain?
All right. Welcome back to a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. Remember to text the word Civic using the Civic Media app for your chance to win some of our great prizes. There's less than a half hour remaining to use Civic Media app to text in the word Civic, CIVIC dot. It's Motown Monday, but Sandy Williams is on board, and I'm glad he's here. So, Sandy,
I wanted to horn in on your good music.
so let me ask you, Sandy. It looks like Joe Biden is about to bring Israel and Hamas to the table.
Yeah, it would appear that a peace proposal that had its genesis within the Netanyahu government is being pushed by Biden, and the reaction of Hamas has been that they're willing to come to the table and talk,
as well as Israel.
Yeah, I think the problem is Netanyahu has part of his cabinet that is extreme right wing, who has no interest in peace at any price. And so they're threatening to abandon the government and to leave Netanyahu's government out hanging and potentially without credentials. But it's a very hopeful thing. I mean, I think that some of the work that Biden's and the State Department is currently doing in the Mideast is really quite profound and could go a long way towards not only solving this in the near term and setting up the process for revitalizing Gaza, but he also has the wheels in motion with respect to the recognition of Israel by Saudi Arabia and maybe other places that could set the wheels in motion for a two-state solution.
Sandy, you and I and anybody else who's been around for an extended period of time knows that Joe Biden does have international chops.
Well, I think he has.
He's always had that.
I think he has international chops. I also think he has sort of natural chops in the direction of being able to reach agreements with people who are otherwise hard to reach agreement with. I think he's a good negotiator, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump wrote a book on negotiation. I don't think he is a negotiator, but I think Biden has been able to deliver on a number of bipartisan things. He's been able to get Washington to do things where other people haven't been able to get it to do anything. And I think that he and his State Department are potentially doing good things with respect to solving the Israel-Palestine problem. And I suspect, quite frankly, that there's ongoing things to try and resolve the Ukraine situation as well. I mean, in spite of the fact that it looks like we're just pouring money there, I'm confident that behind the scenes, back channel, there's a good deal of pressure ongoing now. One of the reasons we put all that money up was to put Ukraine in a strong enough negotiating position so they could go to the negotiating table and not simply capitulate. And I think that was the primary reason, quite frankly, with giving or setting up a $60 billion long-term commitment so that Russia could stare at that and say, okay, I see. Ukraine's in a position to fight for a long time. Maybe we need to settle this. And I think maybe the next step will be to push for settlement.
Sandy, it's safe to say that, people may say, well, he's only doing this because he's running for re-election. Well,
I mean, he's also, and I think it's going to happen this week. The news last week was that we can expect to see a bunch of executive orders coming out this week on the border situation, putting in place a bunch of very strict, through executive order, constraints on immigration. And people will say that's being done for the same reason too. Well, maybe that was the reason that Donald Trump made it an issue in the first place, was because it was for his election. Okay. So, some of this stuff, public policy is about public policy. It also is about politics. But the fact is that when you get a leader to do the right thing, or the thing you think is the right thing, I don't think you should look behind it and decide that because it might be a political act, that it is therefore less of a positive. And my feeling is, quite frankly, that maybe this is something Biden's been wanting to do for a long time, but he's got a House on his side of the table that needs to work its way through things as well.
Well, Sandy, he's kind of checkmating the very things that Trump and the Republicans have had out front, saying this is where he's failing. And he's brick by brick, he's building this to push back on those things that they claim that he's failed at.
Sure, and I mean he's got to negotiate with his own people as well, the people on his side of the aisle. So this has to be understood. It's an art form in order to get Washington to accomplish things and to agree to things. And I think that Joe Biden, people can talk about his age, but I think he remains a very shrewd person with respect to how to make things go and how to make things work through the process of negotiation.
Well, he's been in the game a long time, right?
Yep.
I mean, he knows what buttons to push. Senator Marco Rubio, November is America's last chance. Let's take it by electing Donald Trump. It's America's last chance. This is Marco Rubio. I grew up in Miami listening to the stories about Castro, show trials in Cuba. Not even in my worst nightmares would something like that ever happen here in America, but it did. Over the past 7 weeks, former President Trump was held hostage in the New York City courtroom on an absurd indictment by a far-left prosecutor infamous for being lenient with violent criminals, in a trial presided over by a judge who donated money to his political opponent. Sandy, $15 and $20. It's what the judge donated. Sandy, are we now saying that if you donate $15 or $20 to a candidate, you're beholden to that?
Well, I mean, I think the silliness of it is that apparently a judge is required to not have any private political view. Of course, everyone in this United States has a private political view. That doesn't make them ipso facto biased, okay, such that they can't reach a reasoned and impartial decision. And under that guise, apparently, the only judge who wouldn't be biased, according to Marco Rubio and Donald Trump, is someone who gave money to Republican candidates, okay, or was himself a Republican. So we got to sober up about this. We've got to sober up about supporting the system and the pillars of justice. And Marco Rubio is just carrying water, okay? He's carrying water.
Sandy, I don't understand. To compare our judicial system to Cuba.
Well, that's it is true that in countries where we wouldn't want to live, where there are authoritarian governments, the courts don't work. The courts are, in fact, rigged by the government, okay? But in America, we've set up a system with lots of checks and balances. We have a jury system, first of all. I'm confident that Fidel Castro didn't have a jury system. Number two, our judges are subject to constant inspection and are not appointed by the President of the United States, okay? And they go through a vetting process, and they are under public scrutiny. We have to honor the nature of our system. We have to respect it. And the fact is that it isn't that is not an apt comparison. If we followed Rubio's advice, we'd be electing someone who would like to establish that very system of crony judges, of crony police agencies, of crony prosecutors, people who were totally loyal to the president. Okay? That's the Castro system.
Sandy, when you talk about United States senators making these kinds of public statements, I mean, you really have to shake your head, because even decades ago, I remember some senators who would be careful not to make statements that would indict the entire government, to gain some points. What kind of points is Senator Rubio looking to?
Here's what I would say. There's an expression, "jump the shark." Okay,
Yeah.
and it came from happy days when Fonzie was out apparently surfboarding or water and jumped a shark, and it was such a silly episode that people said the show was no longer any good because it jumped the shark. Or maybe drunk the Kool-Aid would be another comparison. The Republican Party has jumped the shark. It has drunk the Kool-Aid. It has drunk the Trump Kool-Aid, and the people are no longer finding that the American system is what's most important, and they've decided that Donald Trump getting elected is more important than the credibility of the American uh, democratic systems, the pillars of the American democracy.
You know, it's so blatant, Sandy, that I do think, and I'm becoming more confident, that just based on what people can see now, the outrage of what happened when Trump, got convicted, the open hate and vitriol that people have said, and to think that this man was just totally done wrong. He didn't do anything, Sandy. He's been attacked for no reason other than he wants to be the president of the United States. And so the Democrats have plotted to uh, convict an innocent man and to totally ignore.
I think the Republicans even come around to the point of saying, no, actually, he's been convicted of crimes that he committed, but they were petty crimes. Okay, that he should not have been charged with and convicted of petty crimes, as if somehow, if you have a high status in life, petty crimes are beneath you. Okay, you don't get convicted of them, and that's really the silliness of this. I mean, I think everyone who supports Donald Trump would say that he has long and always shown throughout his career a reckless disregard for norms, including laws. Okay, I think that there are a few people who would deny that he falsified the value of his assets when he borrowed money and when he declared his value when he was being taxed. Okay, but he got caught. And everybody who does that could get caught. They do it at the risk of getting caught. Everyone understands that many people get away with it, and then some people get caught. And the more notorious you are, the more in the public eye you are, the more likely it is that you're going to get caught. You know what most people who are committing those kind of crimes try to do? They try to be inconspicuous.
Yes.
Okay? Inconspicuous is the solution mostly to getting caught at the kind of record-keeping crimes, the kind of tax crimes the kinds of crimes associated with fraud that Donald Trump is being chased for. Okay, and the same with the election laws. People who want to get around the election laws or put pressure on people don't do it directly. Okay, they try to find some way to have deniability. Not Donald Trump.
All right, 844-967-2789. Motown Monday. Sandy Williams is in the studio. You can join us, 844-967-2789.
In the pit of my heart, and each day it grows more and more. I'm not ashamed to come and plead to you, baby. If pleading keeps you from walking out that door, ain't no problem, baby. No, don't leave me, girl.
On the next show, you'll have another chance to enter our Text to Win giveaway, and we'll discuss some of the issues that are impacting you and me every day.
Could you just do it one more time? A little more exciting.
Okay, a little more exciting. On the next show, you'll have another chance to enter our Text to Win giveaway, and we'll discuss some of the issues that are impacting you and I every day.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Don't you ever be sad. Lean on me and I go back. When the day comes and you are down and I'm in trouble and I'm about to drown, just hold on. I'm coming. Hold on. I'm coming. I'm on my way. Your lover. If you get
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. If you're listening to Sam and Dave, then you understand why it's called a Motown Monday. Sandy Williams has joined us. He'll be out of town on tomorrow, so we have him here today. Sandy, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools and the big decision that is going to be made today. And there's no question in my mind that he should be removed. You can't. How can you, Sandy? The budget for Milwaukee Public Schools is $1.5 billion. The budget for Milwaukee County, the entire county, is $1.4 billion. Sandy, how can you need more money?
Well, and apparently manage the money and keep track of it. I mean, apparently that's the problem is the ability to manage and steward the money and to be able to report it accurately, all of which would seem to be quite fundamental to an operation that has such a big budget and to the job of superintendent. So I was surprised to see that there were those deficiencies that had cropped up. But yeah, I suspect also that when there's 5 days of news about the fact that you might be getting fired, I kind of think that's what's probably going to happen, right? So I'd be surprised.
Sandy, it's inconceivable that you would not have the checks and balances in place with a budget that large, right? I mean,
it's worrisome too. I mean, it's worrisome because if you don't have if you can't keep track very well, and if you aren't keeping track very well, then it can be pretty chaotic in a big organization as to how things are run, what things are focused on, what gets achieved. How do you measure achievement? Are you measuring accountability in a good way? So, I suspect this is a symptom of a quite a large managerial problem, and of course, Milwaukee public school system shouldn't have to suffer managerial problems. It's got as many problems as it can possibly address that are external to its operation. That we ought to make sure that its operations are first class.
Well, Sandy, you just wonder. Some of the things that are coming out just don't make any sense. They had been working with the Department of Public Instruction on these things for an extended period of time. It was not a secret to the Department of Public Instruction that these things were lacking. And yet the school board, which controls and runs the district, was not even made aware that these kind of deficiencies were going on. Shouldn't that, that alone, Sandy, would be grounds.
I think it probably will be. Yeah, it sounds like you're making a pretty good case. I just think that, and it's a terrible thing because there are plenty of people on the outside who want to attack the public school systems at large. Right. Generally. There are plenty of people in the state who live outside of the Milwaukee public school system who want to attack the system as being defective, who would like to replace it with private schools, charter schools, something different than the public school system. And so I think kind of shame on the operation to give those people more credence and to give them ammunition, because I guarantee you this is going to be ammunition for those who want to take on the notion of public schools for Milwaukee.
You know, son, it makes you wonder if the Department of Public Instruction has been working with the superintendent for months. I guess these reports were due last September, and they've been working with him for months. You would wonder why it took so long for it to be made public.
Well, to be
It-
made
it-
public, number one, and number two, why does it take months and months and months to and to fail? It isn't fixed yet, right? I mean,
No.
the reports aren't done, so it must have been a pretty much scrambled up situation that you can't resurrect the information adequately to create the reports in a matter of 9 months.
Now, a cynical person would think, hey, maybe they didn't say anything about it because the referendum, they wanted that to get through,
Yeah,
right?
I hear you.
Because, I said a cynical person,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, because they wanted that to get through before they put I'm sure if this information had to come out before the referendum would have failed.
Yeah, I think I suspect that there will be those who will now resurrect the idea of creating multiple school districts out of the Milwaukee Public School District, saying that it's too large. And you know what? Maybe it is. I mean, maybe this is proof that from an administrative standpoint, it's too big a job for at least the organization as it is currently organized. Because I know this. We've had a parade of schools of Milwaukee Public School superintendents. The job, people in that job don't last very long.
No, he was there 6 years.
Yeah, and that was a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, he succeeded someone who I think was there a shorter period
Yeah,
of time.
a couple of years.
Yeah.
And on average, they were getting superintendents that have been getting 2 years.
Yeah.
But this guy was allowed to get all of this time. And Sandy, not to mention, he's making more money than the president, than the governor and the mayor almost combined. I mean that, you know.
Well, yeah. What you know what you expect from that for that competence?
Yeah, is that what you said?
I think so. And I think I don't know the man. I think I've met him.
I know the man.
But I think we need to get the school system up to its full potential. That's what's important.
All right, that's Sandy Williams. He'll join us again on Friday. Sandy, have a safe trip. Up next, Jane Matnair on air with Greg Bott. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show. See you later.